In today's video, I'm going to talk about one of the stocks that's my favorite and why I've been buying a lot more lately. So this past week, my family and I were on a family vacation. We went to the Niagara Falls area. And while we were traveling, I was still on the lookout for investing ideas. I am always on the lookout for different ideas. I'm always looking for the potential things that I could learn to inform my investing and refine my investing knowledge. And boy, am I glad I did, because if I hadn't been thinking about it, I could have totally missed an opportunity to learn about this company that's one of my favorites. Psst. I wanted to take a second and point out, as a quick side note, a lot of people, when they go on vacation, they decide, I'm checking out, I'm so tired of thinking about serious things, and they just turn off their investor mindset. Okay, and I gotta tell you that for me, that's when I find I get the most opportunities, because when you're traveling, you're going different places, seeing different people, different things, you get different perspectives, and you're more open to seeing differences and learning. And sometimes that may really help you in your investing. So don't miss that opportunity. Okay, let's go back to the video. Okay, so my family and I have vacationed near the Niagara Falls many times. You can see in the picture on my wall, my kids are really small in that one. And the reason for that is because my mother lives very close by, about 15 minutes away. But one of the things that we did this time that we don't necessarily normally do is we went to an outlet mall that was nearby. And first, let me say, that mall was not like the malls near my home. It was packed. This was an outdoor outlet mall with a lot of stores, over 100 stores. I think it was 115 stores that they had. Some really good brands, some really strong companies. We'll look at it in just a moment. But let me just tell you what happened. So we go to the outlet mall, and one of the first stores that we come across is the Gap, and my wife decides she's going to go trying on clothes, and after about 10 or 15 minutes, I'm pretty bored. So I just start walking around the mall, looking at the other shops, the other stores. Some of them are brands you would recognize. Others are Canadian chains that you might not recognize the brand, and it was just a little bit of nostalgia for me, a little bit of interest. I was looking for maybe a souvenir or something out of the ordinary. And as I'm walking, I'm wearing my favorite shoes, my Hey Dudes. And as I'm walking through this mall, I look up and there is Crocs. Now, I've been investing in Crocs for quite a while, and I know there are physical stores, but I've never actually been to one. You see, any of them that I've just bought online, and I've just never really gone out of the way to go find a Crocs store. So boom, it was right there in front of me, and I thought, oh, this is really cool. And then I thought back to the fact that Crocs bought Hey Dudes earlier this year, and they bought the Hey Dude brand with the idea that they would start using their whole distribution chain to be able to sell Hey Dudes all over the place. And so immediately I was thinking, you know, my Hey Dudes are looking a little shabby. I've had them for a while now. I would love to see if they're in the Crocs store. I'd love to check them out, try on some new ones, and see if I can find some that I like. Well, unfortunately, at least in this store, they weren't carrying the Hey Dude brand at all. When I went into the store, it was packed with all the different kinds of Crocs, and it was actually packed with people, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but no Hey Dudes. So I was disappointed, but it got me thinking. Whenever you visit a location of a company that you invest in, or a store or restaurant or something like that that sells those products, you have an opportunity to learn not just from what you actually see, but to actually talk to the staff. And Chris Camillo and the Dumb Money guys, they talk about doing channel checks. And that's what they're talking about. Go and actually interview the people there on location. And so I immediately started thinking about, I would ask them, Are you going to carry Hey Dudes? Do you know if you're going to be able to, when that will happen? Tell me about Crocs and how much they're selling, because a lot of people really thought, a lot of investors really thought that they only did good because of the pandemic, and there was this huge rise in popularity, and has that demand slacked off? And I had all these questions in my mind that I thought I'd like to ask. And so I did go in and I was looking around. I didn't take any pictures inside the store. I only took a couple from outside the front of the store. And the reason for that was because the store was so packed. And I quickly realized I wasn't going to be able to talk to any of the staff. They were swamped. And while I was disappointed that I didn't actually get to pick their brain, as an investor, that's exactly what I want to see. They were slammed. So this got me thinking, and I stood outside and took a couple pictures of the storefront, but it really got me thinking, and I want to share 3 key takeaways from this channel check, or this one point of data, this one experience on one day, that I really think these are 3 valuable thoughts that you should have in mind if you're considering investing in Crocs, or if you already own Crocs. These ideas should be part of your mindset, part of your thinking about the company that may affect the way that you feel about it. Okay, so number 1 is the customers per square foot in that store. I want to share that experience with you a little bit if I can. Okay, so what I've done is I've gone ahead and pulled up the outlet mall. You can see the Crocs is located right here. If I zoom in a little bit, it should show me this is where my wife got stuck just trying on clothes. This is where we came in. So you see, she doesn't make it far before she gets just shopping right away. And I had wandered all the way down here before I saw the Crocs. And you can see the storefront right there. Okay, so but what I want you to understand is I'm looking at Crocs, right? So zoom in a little bit. You see how small this location is. You can see it in the picture right there. It's not a large location. So this is a chocolate store, Lindt chocolate shop, and it's a comparable size. GNC, it's comparable size. If you zoom out, here's Marshall's, here's Old Navy. Okay, so that gives you an idea of the scale of how small this store was. And it's packed. At one point I counted, and there were 31 customers packed in there that looked like they were either shopping or they were in line. And that's not counting the employees, and it's not counting me. But while I'm standing out here taking a picture, I look over and I see Reebok, which got my interest because I didn't even know Reebok was still like a thing. I don't know the last time I saw Reeboks. And as I walked by, I was not surprised to see that they had hardly any people in their store. Right? And then what's right across the way? Famous Footwear right here, and that sells all kinds of shoes, and hardly any people in the store. And now I'm really curious, because here's Softmock, that's another shoe store, hardly anyone in there. And as I came up on Nike, I thought, oh, surely Nike, I mean, it's a really well laid out store, all this branding and marketing and everything. And really, there was only a handful of people in the Nike store. And then, at this point, I couldn't help it. Now I'm going down, there's Skechers, no one in there. Adidas had a few people, okay? But none of these stores had as many customers as the Crocs store. And it was just kind of eye-opening. And then here's Uggs, and there were a few people in there. I didn't see anyone coming out with packages like as if they had bought any. They just seemed to be going in and looking around. And you look down, there's Brown Shoe Store, Echo Outlet. There's all kinds of different shoe stores, the Shoe Company, okay? And really, none of them had the number of people shopping in them that this tiny little location of Crocs had. So now my radar's up. Now I'm looking at all the stores. And were there stores that had 30 customers in them? Sure there were. But they were the big ones. They were your Old Navy or the Gap or some of these other American Eagle, some of these other large stores that have a lot of pull. None of them were the shoe stores. And when you compare it, they have a huge footprint. So those stores, even though they may draw just as many customers or even more customers and sell more merchandise, they're having to cover the expense of a much larger rent, I'm sure, or lease, right? And then they often have a lot more staff. And so this was an eye-opening experience for me, because put on your investor's mindset. What does that tell you? I love the idea of investing in a company that can sell a ton of its product without having to rent or lease or buy these huge locations with all this elaborate stuff. If you go inside a Crocs store, it kind of reminds you of the shoe. It's not fancy. I'll put up a few images from social media. It's just the basics. I love the idea of investing in a company that is not hung up on being pretentious, that is not spending a ton of money on things that don't really matter, like these huge locations and stocking loads and loads and loads of inventory. I love the idea that this little outlet could just crank out tons of product out of a small location with just a couple staff members. Why? Because that means money. If you're able to sell a large quantity of a product out of a small location with a small staff at a very reasonable cost, what does that mean? That means margin. You are making some money. And so I really think this is one of those things that most investors don't understand. I know I didn't until I saw it in person and really internalized it and thought about it. One of the things that is impressive about Crocs financials is their margin. It's much higher than other shoe companies. And a lot of people look at it and they say, well, it's a cheap shoe. I mean, it's super cheap to make. So if you buy a pair of Nikes or New Balance or Skechers or whatever, they have all these different materials that have to be sewn together and manufactured properly and all this stuff. And they think that accounts for the margin. But if that were the only reason, think about this. Crocs sell typically between $20 and $40 a pair. Your Nikes might be over $100. You're still fighting to get that margin. Why? Part of it is all the other optional expenses that Crocs is not paying, and yet their brand is growing and their sales are growing. I love it. Okay, the next idea that I thought was a huge takeaway. Every time that we go to the Niagara Falls area, I'm reminded of how multicultural that area is. People come from all over the world. Okay, so we only spent about 3 days out in the public while we were there. One day was at a water park, another day was at the falls, and another day was doing tourist-like stuff like this, shopping at the mall. And in those 3 days, I believe I heard at least a dozen languages that I don't recognize. I speak English, I speak French, and I'm familiar enough with Spanish from living in the US to recognize it. And I'm pretty sure that I heard at least a dozen languages that I don't recognize, that I can't pinpoint, from people just walking around. The tourists there have come from all over the world. And so that gives you an idea how diverse the people in this setting are. Well, when I was standing there looking at Crocs, it impressed me the great diversity of the people going in and coming out. You could tell from their dress, from the language that they're speaking, that they were not all Canadian and American. They were from all over the world, and they were coming to this store. And it just cracked me up that people have come from all over the world, and one of the places that they're choosing to go in and look at is the Crocs store, and they're going to go look and find their favorite and buy a pair. And not only the multicultural aspect, but young and old. There were tons of little kids, young families, middle-aged families, and even like older folks, like grandparents, going in to check out the Crocs. So I was really impressed in the overall global appeal, the great diversification that Crocs has as a brand, because nobody gets really excited about it as a shoe, but it seems like everybody sort of has a pair. All right, so number 3, the Hey Dudes not being in the Crocs location. I had to think about this one because at first, honestly, I was very disappointed. I wanted to try some on and buy some, right? But then I started thinking about it, and Hey Dude is a brand that's not that well known globally like Crocs. And so even though their plan may be to distribute the Hey Dude shoes all over the world, management probably has a plan, I would like to think, to really solidify and expand their brand in the US, maybe before they even try to branch out. And technically I was international, I was in Canada, and I don't know if they're actually going to put them in the Crocs stores. I hope they do. I'd love to see a row of them in there. But that is a potential catalyst in the future that they may use that they haven't taken advantage of yet. And so I want you to think about the growth potential long term that they're going to have when they really optimize for carrying Hey Dudes wherever you find Crocs. Won't that be fantastic? Okay, so those are my 3 takeaways from this particular experience, from this channel check, and I wanted to share those with you, but there are some other thoughts that I'll go ahead and share with you about Crocs. So if you've never invested in the stock or you've never considered it, I hope I've piqued your interest enough that you'll actually give it a chance and dig in and take a look at it. I don't want to make a super long video here, so what I'm going to do is give you a few quick hits, a few different concepts and ideas to go look at for yourself, and then I'm going to share something else at the end. All right, a few quick things. Their PE ratio is still right now around 6. Their forward PE around 7. That's fantastic. That is so undervalued when you're looking at strictly compared to their earnings, when you start comparing against other shoe companies, other apparel companies, and just the stock market in general, like the S&P 500 stocks. That is a very low PE to pay for this company. Their growth is strong. A lot of people knew that the popularity of Crocs would explode during the pandemic, and it really did. But a lot of investors felt like this was just a pandemic play, and just like the other pandemic stocks, Peloton and Roku and all these other Teladoc, you know, they're going to come crashing down because nobody's going to use that service or buy those products anymore. Well, Crocs is beating the odds. Crocs is still growing and is projected to grow, and during the last earnings call, they actually upped their expectation because they believe they're looking like they're going to do even better than was previously estimated. So they have strong growth. Next, their margins are fantastic. They've been hovering around 26% for years now, and other shoe companies can't compete with that. And I think we've talked about why I think that is. And so for me, it's exciting to see this high margin company where they're bringing the inventory into the store and out the door and just crank out the products and collect those sales. That's fantastic. Next, one of the things people bring up is, what about the debt? So they do have a high amount of debt. When they were still only worth about, I think, $4 billion as a company, they turned around and acquired Hey Dude for $2.5 billion, and pretty much all of that they paid through debt. And so yes, their debt has skyrocketed on the balance sheet, but the thing to think about here as an investor is the Hey Dude brand was not, you know, one of these startups that they hope will pay off one day. It was already a very profitable company that was bringing in cash flow. And the cash flow from the Hey Dude brand, just as it is, will easily service that debt and help repay it. And with Crocs really expanding that and hopefully just really making that grow, I believe they're going to pay this debt back shockingly fast. Okay, and the last idea I want to share with you during this quick section is about share buybacks. So if you've followed the company or if you do research, you will see that they've done share buybacks in the past at a pretty significant amount. And that's part of their company culture. They want to return money to the investors when they have extra cash flow, and that's great, but they're kind of going to put that to the side while they focus on paying down their debt from the Hey Dude acquisition, which as an investor, I completely understand that and I approve of that. I want them to get their balance sheet back in a good place, and then sure, it'll be great for them to resume doing share buybacks in the future when their stock prices are low and hopefully cash flow is just crazy high. All right, so are you interested in investing in Crocs yet? I want to share one other thing that I've been thinking about, because after I saw that in Canada, I had to make the long drive home and I had a lot of time to think about a lot of things, and I really started pondering, you know, the bigger picture of Crocs and why has it been so successful. You know, this company's been around for a long time, and initially they had some popularity, but then they sort of went away to where, you know, people knew what they were, but nobody thought it was fashionable or, you know, something that they were comfortable wearing out in public. And during the pandemic, things really changed. And now you see, you know, it's kind of like cool ugliness going on with the Crocs. And people have their own style that they share and all that kind of thing. And it really started making me think about how that ties in with Hey Dudes as well. And I really believe, I hope I can paint this picture properly. I really believe this is a multi-generational long-term trend that is slow and gradual, that I think you'll understand and hopefully you'll appreciate the significance of it. When I was a kid, if you were a professional, you worked at a serious job like in an office building, you went to work in a suit and tie. That's what you did. I didn't because I was a kid. But every grown man who went to work at a professional job, they wore a suit and tie, right? I'm sure you've seen that in the movies or in television shows or images, or maybe you lived it. Right? You went to work in a suit and tie. If you were maybe younger and kind of junior and you didn't have that important a job, maybe just a tie. But everybody went to work dressed professionally. Women, they had to wear heels. They had to wear a long dress or a skirt. They had to look professional. And you don't see that very much anymore, do you? Now, we still see it in some cases. I don't mean across the board it's completely changed. Over time, things have really relaxed to where formal and informal is a pretty blurry line now. You know, I work a job that would be considered professional. I work in my own office. I work at a computer doing software work all day. And do you know what I'm wearing? Okay, totally unscripted. Yeah, I'm wearing shorts. I'm wearing my Hey Dudes. Yeah, it's totally casual. And that's totally normal. Shoot, I have a team member that works down the hall from me that likes to come in dressed up as a Jedi now and then. And nobody cares. Why? Well, because our culture has changed. And my boss looks at it like what you wear really doesn't have any meaningful effect on the work product that you do. He cares more about the work that we do. And the truth is, we don't interact with clients in person hardly ever. So it doesn't really make sense for us to get dressed up in a suit and tie for each other. But that's not just us. That's becoming more and more common in all areas. Think about doctors who put on a pair of Crocs at work 50 years ago, 30 years ago. maybe even 20 years ago, you would have never seen that happen because doctors wanted to be taken seriously, and you couldn't be taken seriously if you dress with something on your feet that looked like you're a kid. But now nobody thinks a thing about it. More and more, our society is tending towards informal. So whether you prefer that, whether you like that or not, that's the direction that society is going. And that's going to mean there's going to be more opportunity, more demand for casual clothing, casual footwear. And I think that's one of the reasons I really gravitate towards the Hey Dude brand, because it allows me to look like I'm kind of trying to be a little formal, but it's super comfortable and you can wear them with anything. I wear them to the beach, or I wear them when I go on a walk, or I wear them to the office. I could wear them to church. It really doesn't matter. I don't know if you looked when I put them on real close. I wore them with socks. I wear them without socks. It doesn't matter. So that's got me buying more Crocs. I've been loading up, and earnings is just around the corner. I'm anxious to hear about it. I believe August 4th is when they'll be announcing earnings. I wanted to get more Crocs stock in my portfolio before earnings, just in case the earnings announcement sends our stock price moving on up. I want to get more of my capital invested in this company. If you learned something in this video, please go ahead and give me a like. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe. It really helps the channel. Until next time, have a great day.